Runners Only with Dom Harvey.
Runners Only with Dom Harvey and William B. Evans. Do I call you William? Do I call you Billy? Do I call you
Bill's fine.
Mouse? Where's Mouse from?
Mouse, yeah. My father named me that when I was a little kid, when I was probably 3 or 4, because I was the youngest of 6 boys. And, my father raised us. I lost my mom when I was just an infant. So he had a name for everyone, and that's where I got the nickname Mouse.
Oh, I love it. Well, should we go with Billy today?
Yeah, Billy's
Okay, that's cool. Hey, well, thank you so much for joining me on my podcast, Runners Only with Dom Harvey. I really appreciate it. You're like Boston royalty.
No, I've been, lived in Boston 64 years now. My whole family grew up here. I raised my family here, so Boston's a special city for me.
Yeah, and there's so much to unpack with you, especially in light of this new Netflix Doco series about the Boston bombing, which you feature prominently in. You turned it on episode 1. You're the first face that you see. But first of all, I want to focus on your running journey a little bit. So 2 days ago, you ran the Boston Marathon, 2023, the 10th anniversary of the bombing. How did you get on?
Well, it was a good race. I was lucky. I got to run with my 2 sons. My 2 youngest sons ran that day. And, I wanted to run because it's been 10 years from that tragic day, and to honor the victims and all the survivors, and honestly, to just, make a statement that, Boston came together that day. Everyone was united. It was Boston strong, and I've been a big part. Running's been a big part of my whole life, and I thought it was important that I be out there, and I enjoyed the race very much. Obviously I've gotten a lot slower over the years, but it was a great day. The spectators were great, and it's a great day in the city of Boston.
How did you feel like at the beginning of the run on Monday? Like, were you nervous? Were you anxious?
Well, I've run 60 marathons.
Yeah.
I'm always anxious. I don't care how many you do. You just hope to get over those hills at 17 miles, and you just don't know. Marathon's funny because you could feel great, and then all of a sudden, your body shuts down on you at whatever mileage. So, there's always a little anxiousness and anxiety when it starts. And
No, I mean, any sort of extra anxiety or nerves, I suppose, because of the significance of the date and the 10th anniversary.
I think so.
Yeah.
I can't help think back 10 years ago when, no one ever thought anything like that would happen in the city of Boston. So, marathons 26.2 miles, and anything can happen. And so I think you're always anxious that there's some copycat out there or someone who wants to make a statement, as we see all the time. Unfortunately, in this world, we got some violence and someone with a motive to make a statement. So I don't think you ever can rest and think you're totally safe.
Yeah. So what's your personal best? You're like a
251.
Shit, that's good.
Yeah, I did in Boston. The very first race I ran was a 253, so I traditionally probably half of my marathons were under 3 hours, but obviously as you age, I'm out there more for pleasure and enjoy running with my sons, and it's great. And I was in policing. Now I'm still chief of police at Boston College for almost 43 years. And people over the course of my career, whether it was being the police commissioner of the city and dealing with marathon bombing, asked me, how do you deal with the stress? And I always said, as long as I got my run in every morning at 4:45, there wasn't anything I couldn't accomplish. So running was a big part of my life, and I like to say a big part of my success.
Yeah, do you think, there's a lot to get into with you, I think, if we pick away at some threads, but, in terms of like mental health and PTSD and a whole lot of things like that, do you think your running and being physically fit and this strict routine you've got has definitely helped to keep that stuff at bay?
Absolutely. Yeah. When I feel stressed out, even the week of the marathon, the bombs went off Monday. I think by Thursday morning, with President Obama and his wife coming to town, I think I got out at 3 a.m. that morning just to get a run in. Because, we had a long day ahead of us, but that's the way.
That's like a non-negotiable for you.
Yeah. I mean, everywhere I go, I don't care where I am, if I don't get my run in, I'm not the same type of guy. And, when I had 2,200 officers in Boston, I always like to preach to them how important it is, not only for you physically, but more so mentally. Because in the policing profession, we see people at their worst, and sometimes we see events like the Boston Marathon, where we see some terrible atrocities, and it's tough to deal with. And so I think pushing that mental health and the wellness with running was key, and is key.
Yeah, how do you get through some of that stuff? I had a guy on the podcast last year, Joseph Sullivan, who you wouldn't have heard of, but he's won the America's Cup for yachting. He's a New Zealand gold medalist for rowing as well. Now he's a firefighter, and he said on their way from events, there's a lot of black humour that goes on with him and his colleagues. So do you find that's the same with you?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think cops sometimes joke. Sort of a crazy sense of humor that some people would think, why would you do that? But it's an outlet for us. And, sometimes at a crime scene, you might see the cops chuckling a little bit because that's their way they deal with it. It's not pretty to a camera, or it's not pretty to people who might be watching, but they see such tragic and horrible things in their life that, not that they get cold to it, but I think sometimes that's the way they cope, by sometimes joking about it and thinking, this isn't bothering me, but I think deep down, we're human. Of course it's going to bother us. And, I think after the Boston Marathon, we learned how important it was to get our officers offline and getting them the mental health services they need.
Yeah, right. So, so just on your running journey for a bit, so where did it all start? Because it feels like it's now, like looking back as a 64-year-old man, it's been like a lifelong obsession.
It has, but I didn't really start it until I became a policeman. I think I was probably like 26, 27, and one of my brothers, James, and my brother Paul, they had run the Boston Marathon, and I had gone to watch them. But I remember always saying, I think those people are crazy who do that, and I said, who in their right mind would want to put themselves through that? And I never thought I wanted to, so I started out more doing like 5-mile races and 6.2, and then someone said to me, oh, you ought to try a marathon, and I sort of took the bait, and I tried it, and the very first one, I went all out and trained hard, and I got a 2:53, and I was like, hey, I can do this, and I got the bug, and then it became competitive against myself. Hey, I can do better, and I just really got into marathoning after that.
Yeah, did you for that for those ones in the 250s? Did you have like a program, and were you doing some speed work, or was that just you just going to Hopkinton and?
Yeah, I wasn't big going to Hopkinton and doing the route. I just worked like up in Boston, the Beacon Hills. I do a lot of hill work. I do a regiment. I'd probably really push myself, and and it really came through, and I surprised myself with the 2:53. I think I was just hoping to do well. I was running with the Boston Police Runners Club. We have our own runners club, and I was on a strict regiment and banging out the mileage every week, and almost running 7 days a week for probably almost 25 years. I ran 7 days a week, and I was able to accomplish that goal.
Yeah, good for you. Now, let's talk about your upbringing for a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a crazy upbringing. So you're one of six boys?
Yeah.
Yeah, and your mum passed away with cancer when you were punishingly young.
Yeah, I know. I don't have one memory of my mum, and then, my father was left with 6 boys, and he did a super job raising them, and then when I was 9, my closest brother, Joe, he got struck by a vehicle crossing the roadway, and he got killed. And then my father, who was bringing up 6 boys, he passed away suddenly when I was 14. So, literally I've been on my own since I've been 14. I have 4 older brothers who looked out after me, but they also had their lives to go on. And so, I was very fortunate that a local Catholic priest got me into a good school. And I always joke, and I say I didn't have the brains to get into that school, or we didn't have any money, but he got me a scholarship into a good high school, and I got a good education there, which helped me get into a good college and go on the police department after that. So, but that always shaped who I was, because I had a local priest give me an opportunity of a lifetime, and when I became police commissioner, I always thought, you know, every young kid needs the opportunity I got. And whether, you know, you're poor, whether you're whatever, you know, we should be giving everyone this opportunity. You know, I doubt I've seen a lot of gun violence over my career. And a lot of people say, why do these kids have guns? Why do they shoot each other? Well, a lot of these kids have nothing in the world, nothing to look forward to, and they need an opportunity like I got. So it's always shaped my whole philosophy of what a community is and what help a lot of people need.
Why didn't you go off the rails when you were 14? Like you could have been an angry young man. Like you're going through puberty, you got shortchanged with your mum, shortchanged with your dad as well. You've been through a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Why did you? It seems like you took there's like a fork in the road, and you took a good path rather than a bad path. Why didn't you go the bad way?
Well, I think my father, the way he brought us up to look out for each other and to look out for everyone. You know, he put us into Catholic school, so I was brought up with the sort of Christian values of taking good care of each other, and commandments and everything else. So I was pretty regiment. I like to say, you know, if I needed something, I was more OCD-ish. I'd go after it, and so, I had friends, unfortunately, who did go off the rails and, got involved in drugs, and, I grew up in a community that a lot of people were either good guys or bad guys. I mean, I grew up in South Boston where Whitey Bulger was. I don't know if you've heard of Whitey Bulger, but he was a big gangster in the city of Boston who, killed almost 19 people. And he sort of was the mob that was running my community. And so a lot of guys did go into, the more dark side as opposed to the... So, but I owe a lot to my dad. I think he brought us up right.
For sure.
And, he had my brothers, and what's funny now, Dom, is me and my four older brothers still live in South Boston, and we still all look out for each other.
And I suppose as you've got older as a man and a father yourself, you realise, holy shit, Dad went through all this. Like Dad was dealing with his own grief. Yeah. Dad was probably confused, thinking, what the fuck am I going to do with all these boys? Yeah, I agree. It's a lot. Is he still alive? Oh no, he's
Well,
he was 14.
My dad, 14. He died when he was 52, and I look back. I have 3 children, and thank God I had a wife who brought those kids up great, because as being a policeman, I was out of working all the time. But I don't know how my father would have did it, and I know he died young. But to raise 5 kids and lose one, I can't imagine the stress that was on him. So he died suddenly with his heart, but I can't help but think how tough that was for him to lose his beautiful wife at age 36 and be stuck with 6 boys all under the age of 12.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah. So what are your memories of your dad?
Well,
it's been half a century for you now since you lost him. Yeah,
my memories are he tried to keep us all together. He tried to preach to us to look out for one another, and I was the baby, so he took good care of me, and he always told his older sons that whatever happens, take care of the mouse. That was his nickname for me, and and then my brother Paul became a policeman when he was alive. My oldest brother was a policeman, and he was so proud of Paul, that his son was a policeman. All 3 of my brothers went off to the Vietnam War. He was so proud of them to go off and fight for the country. He's one of the biggest advocates for defending this country. So he was proud of his boys. And,
So do you think, from your perspective, either deliberately or subliminally, you became a cop because you knew it was going to be something that would make your dad proud?
Yeah, I think so. He really, and growing up in the city, that's what we wanted to be, either policemen, firemen, or work for the city or the post office. We didn't have goals, to be attorneys or doctors. As it turns out, my two of my middle brothers became Boston firemen. And so we had 2 policemen, 2 firemen, and one of my brother Tom worked for the public utilities, for the light company. So we were just a working class family who went into professions that working class families went into. And my father was very proud to sort of push us in that direction of public service.
Geez, can you imagine how proud he'd be of you being the commissioner, the top dog, and just the way that you've handled some of the things that have been thrown your way?
Right. Well,
wow.
The funny thing, Dom, is my oldest brother, Paul, was the police commissioner, too, for 10 years. So we had 2 police commissioners in my family, which is probably the only family of a major city police department to have that accomplished. And actually, my 2 brothers, one was a deputy chief on the Boston Fire, and one was a district chief. So we went on to be pretty successful in our professions as leaders of each department. So when I look back at my career and my brother's, I just wish my father was around to see half of what he was, because he would have been proud of us.
Yeah. So what does commissioner mean exactly? You're just the boss of all the police regions of Boston?
Yeah. I mean, in Boston we have 11 precincts across the city. We have approximately 2,200 police officers in uniform, but we also have 800 civilians who work behind the scenes to get the job done as far as human resources, the paychecks, fixing the vehicles. There's a whole support staff. So literally I was overseeing the public safety of the city, but also the 3,000 people who were making that happen. And it was quite an undertaking.
It's a big job. You're spinning a lot of plates.
Yeah, it was. But, I always look back and, it wasn't anything that I really strove to be. A police commissioner, I love being in uniform. And I was in uniform for almost 33 years. I never wanted to be a detective. I never wanted to work plain clothes. I like going to calls. I like being in the visible presence of a policeman. And so I was proud of the job. And then, I dealt with some difficult tasks, such as the Occupy movement in the city of Boston, and then obviously the marathon. And then after that, my commissioner left. Shortly after it, Ed Davis, and Mayor Menino, who was the mayor at the time of the crisis, appointed me acting police commissioner. And then the new mayor, Mayor Walsh, made me the permanent police commissioner.
Wow, what a journey.
Yeah.
What a journey.
I used to see the toll it took on my brother Paul, and I say, who in their right mind would take that job? But
one thing leads to another.
Yeah, I fell into it, and I was overwhelmed at first, but
you grow into the role, don't you?
Yeah. Well, the hardest part, and I joke a lot, is all I had was blue outfits, police uniforms for 34 years. So I think I owned one suit and one tie. So I had to go out and buy a whole wardrobe so I looked good every day. And I ended up having like 15 suits and 100 ties, and so the hardest part was finding an outfit every day when all I had to worry was putting on the same outfit for almost 34 years.
Yeah, in a way, I suppose it's kind of like, there's some big minds that come to mind, like Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook and Steve Jobs from Apple, and they were the same. They had almost like a uniform.
Yeah.
They wore the same thing every day because it just took one decision out of each day for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it was the same for you. Tell us about Terry, your wife Terry. You're still married. It seems like you're very happily married.
Yeah, we'll be married almost 35 years in another month. She grew up in the city, and she's a Rosendale part of the city. She very sharp girl. Obviously, I always joke, and I shouldn't joke. She's a lot smarter than I am. She was Boston Latin girl. Went on to Simmons College. She has her master's in English as a second language, and I had to work a lot of days, a lot of nights, and she basically was the one home raising the children, and sort of gave up her career because she worked for the Federal Reserve Bank, writing their publications, this and that, and raised our 3 children. And a lot of nights I would come home from a rough night, and I'd be out of gas, and she'd be sitting at the kitchen table, quizzing the kids on their homework, and so she's a strong woman, and I owe a lot of my success to her because she basically helped raise a beautiful family for me, and all my 3 children doing well, but I owe that completely to her, and I'm a lucky guy with a good woman.
I feel like you would have been quite conscious, or don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm guessing, like, after a hard night shift or after a hard day at the office, you're not the sort of guy that's going to come home and disengage and just sit down with a beer and ignore your family. I feel like you would have been quite good at sort of managing and, you know, wearing the different hats, the cop hat, the family, the dad hat, the husband hat.
I am, but my wife, see, the problem with me, and my wife jokes with me all the time, is I didn't have any females in my life. You know, my mom died when I was an infant. My father raised us. We had 6 boys, and so, you know, she always used to say, "Be careful what you say to your daughter," because it was different. Like, guys, we were guys. You know, no one ever put the toilet seat down.
There was no need to.
Yeah, no one had clothes on, and so, you know, the whole environment was such different growing up in an all boys family with no mom. So, you know, I had to get lectured on how to bring up a daughter, and, you know, a lot of issues around a young female growing up. So, you know, my wife was, thank God, able to handle a lot of that.
Yeah, and so you got 3 kids, 2 sons, 1 daughter.
Yeah.
They're all grown up now in their 20s, and you're about to become grandparents for the first time.
Yeah, my daughter. In fact, initially the game plan for this year's marathon that all 3 of my children were going to run the race.
Wow.
And they were all signed up, but then about 2 months ago, my daughter asked us over for dinner, and she got married in August, and now she's expecting in August. So, needless to say, she stopped training because of the safety of her newborn, and you know, so 2 of my boys ran. So, but me and my wife are excited to be grandparents, and it'll be a new chapter in our life, taking care and helping out her as she starts her new life. And so we sort of joke with her, saying, it looks like, you know, she's going to have a girl, we know. And I said, well, payback's a bitch. You know, we sort of joke and say, see how you like raising a girl now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
it's an exciting new chapter of your life, I guess, isn't it?
Is.
And you seem like really calm and at peace now and just ready for this chapter.
Yeah, I am. It'll be fun. And, you know, my wife teaches still at Catholic school in South Boston, 2 blocks from our house. And, you know, I'm always hoping she'll, you know, relax a little and retire, and maybe now is the time that we're having a grandchild and my wife can help raise the baby.
Mm. How do you think you'll be different as a grandfather to how you were as a father? Were you quite a strict dad, or?
Well, I think I was brought up very strict.
Yeah.
I think I was pretty strict. I mean, not as strict as my father was. I mean, the old school, you know, if you messed up, you got a kick in the ass.
Whack. Yeah, I was raised in a Catholic family as well, and any of the uncles or aunties could give us a smack.
Yeah. But I mean, I think I was tough on them, you know, especially, you know, I want them to be successful, but, you know, not overly stringent at any means. And they all grew up to be great kids, you know. I had one daughter, they all went through college. I had one go to Harvard, one go to Boston College, and my other daughter went to, you know, Westfield State, which was pretty good.
Oh, g'day. That's my mum.
Hi.
Mum, this is Billy Evans.
How are you? Nice to meet you.
Actually,
Congratulations.
you guys probably ran similar times. What was your time?
I think I was like 4:55 too. Right there. Good for you.
You're good. Oh, God, she's going to be going, the whole plane ride home, she's going to be going on about that. He's in his 60s and I beat him.
It's too hard when you walk.
Oh, yeah. I was hurting, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had some good races. This one, I was, you know, I feel my hip. I was telling Dom, I was in Toronto 4 years ago running, and I tripped. And I went down, and I got up, and I had hurt my hip. And I walked 5 blocks back to the hotel, and I called the State Department who had sponsored my trip, and I said I wanted to get back home because I was hurt. And the hotel got me a wheelchair, put me in a cab, and I hopped on the plane, and I came right home and went right from Mass General here, and I had a broken hip. So they ended up putting a rod and 4 screws in my hip 3 years ago, and you know, but I've run probably 3 or 4 marathons on it, and I feel good. But yeah, but I could feel my hip on Monday just because of the dampness, and it was.
Oh, is that right? Oh, you feel it on cold days?
Yeah. It gets into your bones, and so.
Well, we're both ones.
Yeah. So I could care. My two children ran.
That's
you know,
amazing.
and they did under 4, both of them. So I was more happy for them than the fact I finished. And it was number 60 for me. So let's
Oh, how good. Congratulations. Yeah. Do you have any aspirations to get to 100 or anything?
No. I wanted to get to 60. I hope I bounce back from this one. I'll keep going. You know, my sons are going up to Maine in 3 weeks. There's the Seacoast Marathon, and they're going to try to do that because they're all trained up now, and they're young.
Yeah.
They can probably bounce back. But, you know, I'm going to go easy for a while with the hope, you know, bouncing back. I hope to do another couple anyway. I don't know.
Fantastic. Oh, you've still got Tokyo and Berlin to do.
Yeah, to get to 6.
Yeah, how good. Okay, so you become a cop. You're a cop on the beat for many, many decades. I suppose there's a lot of things that you saw and you did that just sort of roll into one or blur into another day, but there must be some more memorable or unforgettable cases as well.
Well, you know, growing up here in the city, you know, unfortunately, you know, deal with a lot of gun violence in the neighborhoods, and nothing bothered me more to see a lot of young kids dying on the streets, you know, and witnessing it, basically. That stuff always bothers me, you know, so we've seen a lot of tragedies, and I don't miss that stuff being now at Boston College, but you know, a lot of challenges. We were fortunate in this city. We've had 12 sports championships over the last 20 years. You know, I was able to witness 4 Red Sox championships, 6 Patriots championships, Bruins and Celtics, and putting on those parades were always a challenge for me in those celebrations. But obviously, I think the biggest challenge for me will always be the tragedy of the Boston Marathon bombing back in 2013.
Yeah, would you say that's the event that sort of defined your whole career?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's something that will always stick in all our minds, and I think, and most definitely, that's the most defining moment.
Yeah. Do you think because you're a cop and a runner as well, it just had like a double whammy sort of effect for you?
It did. You know, I, being a marathoner and having done the Boston Marathon, you know, at that time probably 20 times, I know the running community. I know the members of the Boston Athletic Association. They're all my pals. Dave McGilvery, Josh Nemza, Tom Grill, Jack Fleming. And so, you know, all those meetings, all that planning, I was deeply involved in. And, you know, being a lifelong resident of the city, when they blew up our marathon, I took it personal. You know, not only was I a marathoner, that was my plan that day. You know, I was in the leadership position, and so I felt an utmost responsibility to find out who did this. And, you know, Mayor Menino was the mayor at the time. You know, for him, I wanted to get who did this. And so that's what drove us over those 5 days. And, you know, and you know, at the end, to be there and be right on the scene, the first one on the scene, and to capture that and put this to a rest and closure was very satisfying for me.
You mentioned just before you're on the leadership group, so you felt a certain level of responsibility. Was there and there shouldn't have been, but was there like an element of guilt or something that you should have done more, or there could have been some way you avoided this happening?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think there's any guilt. I mean, when you think of it, 26.2 miles, it's an open-air event, it's a family day. You know, who could have anticipated what would ever happened, you know? We were fortunate in the sense that the bombs went off when they did, because if it went off closer to 12 o'clock that day, the crowds were so much thicker. I mean, this was 4 hours and 48 minutes into the race. And I look back, and the crowd had somewhat thinned out at that point. And I always look back, if they had done it earlier, there would have been so much more tragedy. And but I don't think anyone could have foreseen the horror on that street that day, and two individuals would be so evil to pull out what they did. And all I think about is them poor victims who lost their lives, and so many people, as we've seen the other day, who lost limbs and you know, have to live with that pain and suffering the rest of their life.
Yeah. So run us through the day for you. So Marathon Monday, Patriots Day, 10 years ago, 2013. So you go to the start line. How are you feeling about the run, first of all?
Well,
I feel like it's a day of two halves for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a regular, again, probably my 20th marathon. I went up to Hopkinton. It was a beautiful day. I remember hanging in the gymnasium up there and getting out and run, and I felt great. It was one of those races. I think I did a 3:34 that day at the marathon, and I finished. My wife Terry and my son Will, who was 13, were at the finish line, and being a superintendent, my vehicle was like 2 blocks away, and so I rallied with them, got them in my car, rode them to my house, and I went down to the local athletic club, which is about 6 blocks away from my house, and was in a hot tub. And we sponsor all the clubs from around the world who come to Boston, and we get them transportation up, but we also use this health club, all of us. So I was in the hot tub talking to a bunch of officers, and we were telling war stories about the marathon, and one of my detectives ran in and said, "Hey, boss, 2 bombs went off at the finish line." I was like, "No way. That couldn't have happened here. That doesn't happen here in Boston." I thought at first it was a transformer, maybe blew up.
Yeah.
An electrical, because that area, Copley Square, had a few electrical explosions over the last few years. But he said, "No, that's what they're telling me." So I got out, jumped in the shower, got in my car, got home, had to run up 3 flights of stairs, put on my uniform, and within 10 minutes I was back at the scene. And to see, the pain, the suffering, to see the barriers blown out, the windows, it was surreal to think that I had run down the street just a little over an hour ago, and to see the destruction is something I always remember. But at that point, I had to put my policeman hat on and go to work trying to secure that scene, make sure the victims were all well taken care of, and then direct operations to find out who was responsible for doing it.
Yeah, how do you, in a situation like that, keep cool and composed and not make any knee-jerk or silly decisions? Do you know what I mean? Like, you're surrounded by chaos, and you don't know no one knows what's going on.
No, I mean, my police commissioner was there. Then other outside agencies, the FBI, state police, everyone started coming in to assist us. But, you had to lock down the scene. You had to sweep the whole area with bomb technicians. But then we had to set up a command post up in the Westin Hotel close by here and go to work arranging, to have security at the hospitals, have security all over, because we had some terrorists out running around and we didn't know what the next target would be.
Yeah, and this is a big focus on the Netflix Doco series that we're talking about. Just the hunt for, as they call them, black hat and white hat. So when did it become clear to you that this was like a bombing thing, and these were the two guys you were looking for?
Well, I think we knew it was a bombing thing when we were on the scene, because you could see parts of the pressure cooker, you could see the BBs, you could see elements of what was inside that pressure cooker. So we knew it was deliberate action, but we didn't know who it was till almost Wednesday of that week, when after we viewed videos along the finish line, after we asked people to give us their phones, we were able to limit it down to those 2 individuals walking up, I think it was Hereford Street, by Whiskey's, which was the bar there, and we seen them both walking with the backpacks, and there they separate, and we follow them as they move down outside the Forum restaurant. And I think I've seen that video a million times where White Hat literally drops that backpack at the feet of the Richards family. I still can't get that thought out of my head that someone would place a bomb deliberately behind a young family and deliberately walk away and blow that family up. It's not like he dropped it there an hour early and whoever happens to be there. But he knew what he was going to do there. And then the other brother had just set off the bombs outside, Marathon Sports. And so, that's when we focused on White Hat and Black Hat.
It's unimaginable, isn't it? Really, just like drop it. It feels very personal in a way, like dropping that bag, noting the people that are around you, and noting that they're going to be the victims. Yeah.
I mean, it was a beautiful young girl, young family, with everything to live for, and he decides to stand behind that family, and he stood there for a good 5 or 10 minutes. So he knew, and when everyone looks to the left, with the first bombs going off outside the forum set off by Black Hat, he starts to move to the right. And that's why we knew this was our guy. And he was probably only 10 yards away when that whole area blows up. So, tough to know that he knew who he was going to hurt.
How many people did you have going through footage? Like you said you put the call out for footage, and everyone's got a phone in their hand, and everyone's recording everything these days. You must have had just thousands, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of hours. How big was the team?
We had FBI, we had state police, forensics, we had Boston. I'm not sure the exact numbers, but we had whatever it took to narrow down onto these two guys. Amazing.
And then the city went into lockdown. The whole world is familiar with lockdown now because 7 years after that, the pandemic came along. So everyone's. But this was a weird. I can't imagine what it was like being on the ground in Boston at that time. It must have been a terrifying time for all the residents and just a bizarre time.
Yeah, it was bizarre. During the week, President Obama and his wife came to town on Thursday, and then that night is when Officer Sean Collier got shot at MIT. And then the terrorists were on the run then. And I think after that shootout in Watertown, we got information that they might be heading to New York. And there was a lot of info out there. So, just to make sure the city was safe and surrounding communities, because it wasn't just Boston that was shut down. Watertown was, a lot of the surrounding communities. The governor and mayor put the shutdown order in place. And for the next probably, 12 hours, people didn't go out, and it was an eerie time. And I got to Watertown around midnight after Sean Collier got killed, and for the next 19 hours, we were on the ground in Watertown searching for that one who turned out to be White Hat all day long. Black Hat was shot and killed in the shootout, and then the brother was the manhunt, and I sort of spearheaded that for the next, 19 hours. And finally we were able to, locate him in the boat again.
You were right there on the scene. So there was it was almost like a Wild West type shootout, and then you called you made the call to cease fire because you wanted the White Hat taken in alive rather than dead.
Right.
You look back now, was that the right decision?
Yeah, I think it was. I think clearly, we didn't know what the motives were of these individuals. I don't think we knew how big of a terrorist cell it was. So, if we had just killed him, we would still never know who was behind this. And the ability to take him alive and to interrogate him and to find out his motives and to see if this was just sort of a lone wolf with the two brothers, I think turned out to be instrumental. But I didn't want him killed. We had way too much information to gather. And as it turned out, I thought it turned out well.
What are your thoughts on because he's on death row, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the death penalty? Are you for it, against it? Or?
Well, growing up as a Catholic, I was never for it because our religion is against it. But I have mixed emotions on this one because I seen how treacherous they were, how evil they were, and the fact that White Hat deliberately stood behind that one family and did what he did. If there was a reason to have it, this is the best reason to have it. But, morally, I'm against it, but I think there has to be occasionally an exception to send out that we won't tolerate terrorism in such evil acts as these two brothers committed.
Yeah. Yes, I might say Black Hat, the brother that got shot and then run over, got off lightly. I think a better punishment is to sit in a cell for a number of years to think about what you've done and then face your own demise.
Right. And, again, two evil persons who brought terrorism to Boston. And I'm just was happy as a marathoner and as a resident of the city and as a policeman to be instrumental in capturing them. And I remember one of my good friends, Cullum Lyon, who was a deputy on our job, he said, it's almost like the marathon gods wanted you at the final scene to get the person who was responsible.
Yeah. Oh, the final scene being like the boat in Watertown.
Boat, yeah, I literally was the first one on the boat.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll just rewind a little bit. So the Obama visit. So Obama was president at the time, and he came when the search was still underway.
Yeah.
Was that like from your perspective? Was that annoying at the time?
Well, it was
like
annoying.
A distraction.
It was, just because we were so tired.
Yeah.
We were flat out, and normally putting on a presidential visit by itself is quite an undertaking. But to put it on in the middle of a terrorist on the loose in your city, it was that much more draining, And then him and his wife went to 5 different hospitals, working with the Secret Service. It was just probably wrong place, wrong time. But Dom, as it turned out, he gave a great speech, a uniting speech that really rallied the city. So I looked at it as a drain on our resources, but it was very instrumental in bringing the city together and healing the city.
Yeah, so that week, I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes. Like, how much sleep were you getting? Were you sleeping at all?
No, I bet. I'm lucky I got 10 hours all week. And, my adrenaline was pumping. I'd go home. When I ran the race, I was up probably at 4 on Monday. First time I went to bed was 10 o'clock on Tuesday night. So I think I was awake for probably 36 straight hours. And then every night after that was 3 or 4 hours because we were all running on fumes. Just think of it. I had just run 26.2 miles and I didn't go to bed for almost 36 hours. But to tell you the truth, I didn't feel my legs. I was just running on pure adrenaline.
Yeah. So Watertown, where the shootout happened with the boat, where is? You have to excuse my geography. Where's Watertown from where we are now in central Boston?
Well, Watertown abuts Boston out by Newton. So if you picture where Heartbreak Hill is, it's probably only a couple miles from there.
Oh, okay.
So it's not far off the route. But I don't know Watertown.
Yeah.
Because I grew up as a city kid. I didn't venture far out. So when I got word that they were chasing in Watertown and there was the shootout, I had no clue where I was going out there. And even when I was incident commander, I was in an area I was very unfamiliar with the streets and where I was, but I was able to take control and run that whole final scene.
So because the search had been done around Watertown, did someone cock up? Did someone not look in the boat that should have looked in the boat?
I don't think anyone ever looked in the boat. I don't know if that was off the grid, but all of a sudden I got word from a Watertown cop that they had word that someone was in the boat, and we quietly went up, and I walked down the alley, and I seen someone poking at the heat sail of the wrap of the boat. And so I was on first one literally on that boat with 2 of my officers. And we were able to, work with the FBI hostage recovery team. We threw flashbangs in the boat. We threw smoke grenades, and finally we were able to negotiate with them, and we got them out. And so it was a successful conclusion.
Yeah. How does that negotiation look?
Well, I think they just said, they were dealing with them. Come on, and. Whatever the FBI said to him, they got him out.
Like, come on, mate, you're fucked.
Yeah,
You just,
Well, he knew. I mean, we had already thrown a flashbang and a smoke grenade. It was just a matter of him coming out, and I remember them getting him out, wheeling him by me. He was wounded, shot in the neck, and all bloody. And I remember saying to the FBI hostage recovery, "Is that our guy?" And they said, "Yep, 100%. That's our guy." And it was the most. Successful conclusion that we could have had. And, but it was the conclusion of a 105-hour ordeal for all of us, and I was just glad it was over.
How many bullets were fired into that boat? It's probably lucky that he got away with his life in a way.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was screaming for everyone to stop shooting. Yeah. Probably, people estimated maybe as many as 200, but we were able to get them out and bring it to a successful conclusion. And I was never so relieved in all my life when they wheeled them by me, and we finally got the 2 people responsible.
Yeah. God, that must have been just a huge sense of relief. And then did you go and see him in hospital?
Well, it's funny. I went up to watch the Red Sox game where, Big Papi addressed the crowd. And then I went by the Beth Israel Hospital where he was just to make sure it was very secure there. And I went up outside his room, and there were several policemen outside the door. And they said to me, "Boss, do you want to go in and see him and take a look at him?" I said, "I don't ever want to see that guy again." I says, I was disgusted with what he did. I had seen him come out. I seen him at the boat, but I didn't. I had such disgust that I didn't want to open that hospital room and take a peek at him because, I had no respect for the guy, and I'm not going to honor him by thinking he's a role model or something. And so I said to my officer, "I don't ever want to see him again. No, I don't need to see him." So I did go by the hospital, but I'd be damned if I'm going to take a peek at him.
Yeah. You mentioned, you swung by the hospital after being at Fenway Park for a Red Sox game. Is that where you got acknowledged on the field?
Yeah, everybody did. And then Big Poppy said, they blew up our effing city, and it was quite emotional for me when they played God Bless America, and they had a collage up on the big screen of the city and what it went through, and I remember tears almost coming to my eyes because it was such an emotional 5 days.
It's just unimaginable.
Yeah.
And then how do you de-stress after that? Like what are the days, the weeks, the months after that look like?
Well, it was tough. My wife was on me about the mental health training. I ended up speaking to a fellow at Harvard who specialized in dealing with aftermaths of terrorism and sort of like mental health. And I told him what I went through. And after going through the whole ordeal, I said to him, "Doctor, what's your advice?" He says, "Just keep running. Just keep running. That's your medicine." And my wife, I think, when I told her that, said, "You're kidding me."
I feel like you must be paraphrasing. There's more to it.
You run enough, and you don't need to be told to keep running. But that, like I said earlier here, that's my medicine. That's the way I deal with stress. And I continue to run, and that's why at age 64, almost 65, I hope I run till I'm 90, hopefully.
Yeah, you're doing great. So no real therapy or counselling or anything to speak of?
No, nothing.
Just didn't feel like you need it. What do you have like a resilience plan, or is it just running?
Just running, But
I suppose like discipline as well. I suppose that comes into it, like your 4:30 starts that you've done for years and years and years.
Yeah, it's discipline. It's being out there, and I think when you're runners, at the end of the day, when you put your head on the pillow, usually you don't have a problem sleeping because you put in a long day. And as police commissioner, I was running on 2 or 3 hours of sleep most nights. So I built up a good tolerance to not getting a lot of sleep. And as marathoners, when something tragic like the Boston happens, I think being in that type of shape helped carry me through those 5 days.
Yeah, but I just can't imagine what this compounded stress over all these years has done for your cortisol levels or your heart rate and things like that. It's your blood pressure. You're in good shape. You get a medical and
I see a cardiologist. I keep on top of. I remember the week after I had to go to the dentist because my teeth were killing me after the bombing, and I went in and he says, "Nothing wrong with your teeth." He's like, "You're just grinding your teeth after the week you had," and so. I remember going to the dentist, and that's how bad I must have been under stress. I had to go to the dentist because I was just grinding my teeth. So, but I tried it medically. I knew the stressful job I was in. I always made sure I got, as I do now, regular checkups. Even before running this marathon, I got a good thorough checkup by my cardiologist just to make sure I'm okay to go over the heartbreak hills of Boston.
And what about nightmares and stuff? When you shut your eyes at night and you go to sleep, any bad dreams about the things you've seen? And
well, I think once in a while, whether it's young kids getting shot on the streets of Boston or going to a tough car accident where you see some terrible things. I've seen children burned up in fires. I've seen a lot of tragic things, and I think. Again, running's the key to my success. I've talked to counselors over the years, and I don't think anyone should be afraid to seek mental health training, and it's beneficial to me.
Yeah.
Every study you hear, everything you read, sometimes say, aerobic exercises is great for mental health, and I think that's why we all get addicted to running, because it feels
completely.
good
Yeah.
physically and it feels good mentally.
Yeah, it clears your mind. It's
Yeah.
it's funny, because it feels like everyone's known about the physical health benefits of running, but it feels like it's only a recent thing, like the last 10 or 20 years, that you realise just the goodness it brings from the neck up. It's incredible. Hey, I mentioned on my Instagram page to my mostly New Zealand fans that I'm meeting with you today, and I've got a bunch of questions from them to put to you. How has this case affected your perspective on life, society, and humans as a whole?
Well, I think it hasn't really. I think most, if not all, people have goodwill in their heart, and we all look out for each other. But unfortunately, there's people out there who sometimes get radicalized, who will act out like these two brothers did. I think the problem in a lot of our world is, mental health's a big issue. I think you see here, especially in America, way too many violent incidents with guns, and so 99.99 people are good, but unfortunately, you have some people who are evil, and I think we've seen it in this case.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on gun violence in America?
It's tough.
Yeah.
As police commissioner in Boston, I was dealing with it, and we have major cities who, have young kids getting killed in our streets every day, and it breaks my heart to see it. And I wish we could do more, not to take away people's Second Amendment rights, but to be stricter and have universal gun laws, so we can keep guns out of young kids' hands who take each other's lives, senseless violence.
Yeah. Because we had a situation, I don't know, you may have heard about this, maybe not on your radar. There was a mosque shooting in New Zealand a few years ago on March 15, and again, like a lone wolf gunman went into these mosques and shot 50 Muslims dead. And our government immediately implemented this gun buyback scheme. But the issue is it hasn't really worked, because what you've got is good people who are legally entitled to have these guns doing the right thing, and then bad guys with guns and not doing the right thing.
Yeah, but
so it's a tough one, isn't it?
But you know what? I'm a big advocate. The less guns we have overall in society, the better. Because what we find in America is 65% of the gun deaths are by suicide.
Really?
And so having a gun around the house sometimes gets into the wrong hands. Or someone who's having a mental health crisis has access to a gun and they commit it. So, if that gun wasn't in the house, a young kid might not have picked it up, or a young, so I'm a big advocate. The less guns in gun buyback, a lot of people say it's a gimmick, but if you can get a gun out of a house that doesn't get into the hands of a young child, it's a good thing.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective and a good way of looking at it. Someone asked the question, in hindsight, would you do anything differently? I suppose this pertains to the bombing.
Not really. I mean, obviously we wish we could have prevented it, but we didn't have information enough to do that. I think the response was unbelievable. I think, within 20 minutes, 270 people were taken from the scene, and everybody taken from the scene survived. So the response, the training, the preparation was good. No one could have ever foreseen what could have happened. And I think the response was a good response. Being at the final boat scene, I wish, obviously, we lost a little control with so many officers responding to the scene. I think we could have did a better job there. But I was just happy after 5 grueling days that we were able to get the 2 people responsible.
Yeah, good stuff. And someone asked the 2014 marathon 1-year anniversary. How on edge were you?
What was that one again?
2014, so the 1-year anniversary.
I was commissioner at the time.
So you didn't run that year?
No, because I became police commissioner. It was my responsibility to make sure that race was safe. And I, in my right mind, couldn't be out enjoying the day when I was so concerned about the security and safety of the residents of the city. So I remember walking the route, the last 2 miles, up and down, making sure everything was locked down. And I'll always remember Meb Kableski, when he ran by me. I was at Beacon and Park Drive, and it gave everyone goosebumps because an American was going to win the race the year after the bomb. And you talk about good karma. It really, Boston strong, for an American to win it, a year, that set the tone. And everybody was thrilled with the way the day went. And talk about karma, the same year the Red Sox went on to win the World. So Boston came together all as far as an American winning the race, the Red Sox, putting on a new, a more secure marathon. But it was a stressful day for me.
Yeah, no doubt. Has Boston Strong always been like a Boston slogan, or is that something that was created?
It was created here.
Right.
I think the way the city rallied around the victims, the way the city rallied around law enforcement, the way everyone came together, that motto came about. And, when I was running the other day, with a mile to go, painted on an underpass year-round is Boston Strong. And it just brought back a lot of good memories for me when I had a mile to go and sort of pushed me that last tough mile, believe it or not. And, even when I was running this day and my legs were hurting, I was thinking of the victims and the pain and the suffering they went through. And I'm like, this is nothing compared to what they did. And it brought me through those last couple grueling miles.
Yeah. Someone asked on Instagram in regards to black hat, white hat, is there an update on the rest of the family? Like, you don't care?
I'm done with them.
Yeah. It's tough though in a situation like that, though, isn't it? Like, imagine how embarrassing it is. Someone in your own family does something as heinous as that. It's awful.
It's tragedy to think of someone that could be that evil.
Any ideas about what we can do to stop someone turning into a criminal?
Well, I think it's all about your upbringing. I really do. I think the values, the religion, good parenting. I think there's, but again, unfortunately, people have mental health crisis that, they act out. And in these cases, they were radicalized by their religion. And so I think the key thing, and we really preach here, if someone knows about someone who might be involved in criminal activity or terrorism, if you see something, say something. That's the big motto here. We're finding more and more that there's usually some early warning red flags that could have prevented these events, whether it's an active shooter event or whatnot. So, if you're a mother, your dad, or if you're anybody who sees someone who has a mindset that they're going to do something terrible, all we ask is they call and let us get them the help they need.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone asked the question, what did police learn from the Reddit stuff during the manhunt? They touch upon this in the Netflix documentary. I think it's just about people doing almost like jigsaw journalism, basically, like trying to piece together what happened on the...
Yeah, I don't get that a lot. They got to leave the job to us. There's too many Monday morning quarterbacking, as we call it out there.
Yeah, right.
Everyone wants to be a criminal analyst and, leave it to the trained people.
Yeah. Someone wants to know, there's in New Zealand at the moment, there's a huge problem with youth crime, in particular spate of ram raids. Yeah. So you get these kids, they steal a car, crash it into a shop and go nuts. What would your solution be for that?
I think it's basically, you got to call these kids in and try to talk to them about, the disorder they're causing, and maybe even talk to the parents and get the parents and the community involved, because it shouldn't be a police issue. I've found everyone always relies on the police to solve it, but it's more a public health issue that the community has to come together and stop it. Whether it's their parents getting involved in their lives and giving them opportunities, but it shouldn't be just the police dealing with these kids. It should be a community issue, and it should be the parents.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great answer. One thing we see reported a lot when it comes to American cops in New Zealand is racism, and there was the George Floyd thing a few years ago. What are your thoughts on that, racism?
Obviously, I think policing has a history of racism in their past, and I think George Floyd and a lot of events here in America have brought that to light, and I think American policing is changing a lot of their tactics. A lot of policing are going unconscious bias training, fair and impartial policing, and we learned a valuable lesson that police officers have biases out there, and we need to correct them, and we should be fair and impartial no matter what color, religion, creed, whatever you are. And so terrible time in policing over the last couple of years, and I think police are starting to train better and realize the mistakes of the past.
Yeah. And someone wanted to know about the movie Patriots Day, which is the Mark Wahlberg movie about the Boston bombing. Who played you, by the way? Were you cast in the movie at all?
Yeah, I was someone, James Colby, who was a local Hollywood actor who grew up in the city, played me. James, he was a good guy. Unfortunately, he passed away about a year or two ago suddenly, but,
Were you happy with him as the casting, or were you shooting for Brad Pitt?
Well, I was shooting for Arnold Schwarzenegger. I couldn't get Arnold. He wasn't available, so we ended up going with James. And
By the way, can you imagine Arnold trying to do a Boston accent?
But, Mark Wahlberg was neat working with those guys and working with Peter Berg, who was the director. But, again, it all comes down to remembering the victims. As I look over this and sort of to sort of wrap up a little bit, I think we can never forget what this was all about. It was about tragedy that happened on that day. It's about remembering, the 4 victims who lost their lives to these terrorists, and more importantly, Boston coming together to address what was a horrible event on the streets of our city. And so I always say there was no heroes here.
Yeah.
It was everyone pulling together when the city was down and out to raise it up, to put Boston on the map as Boston Strong.
That's a nice conclusion. Just a couple of final ones about the Netflix thing, though. Yeah, so you've seen the 3. It's only come out a few days ago, but you've seen the 3 episodes. Yeah. You're mostly happy with it. Anything that you said that was omitted that you wish was in there?
No, I think they did a good job portraying a lot of what happening. It was very emotional for me to watch those 3 days, and I watched it with my son and my wife, who were very emotional over it, and it was a sad day in Boston, and it brought back a lot of poor memories for me, but I thought it was they had a lot of video there I had never seen, a lot of things I hadn't known about, and so a lot of it was eye-opening for me too, but I thought, from what I seen, and it was a realistic sort of snapshot of what happened.
Yeah, and it's only been a few days since it's been up now, and no doubt it's going to be a hugely popular documentary that's consumed all over the world. You haven't noticed a difference? Like your inbox hasn't been... you got a podcast request from New Zealand.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people have been texting me and, email me just saying, hey, we appreciate all you did, and you were great in it. You came across as genuine and more emotional, but it was an emotional time for me. And as I look back when they did that interview, it's something I'll never ever get over. It's and I don't think the city will ever get over it. So some people have said some complimentary things, but again, it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's about those victims that day and those who still live with those injuries.
All right. Hey, Billy Evans, a.k.a. Mouse, a.k.a. William, former police commissioner of Boston and one of the central figures in the whole Boston bombing aftermath. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast today. Really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I hope you had a good time in Boston, and you come back soon.